Okay, I'm back. As you can see, I showered, I shaved, I changed. It's another day. Part two of this video on the week 4 slideshow ended abruptly because I ran into my 15-minute limit. This is the third and final part. Just talk about the last few slides and begin drawing some connections between Gilgamesh and Genesis, which might help you, again, think about what you're doing with your essay. If you're trying to draw connections between the two texts, this last part of the video might help you think about that. I'll put myself back down into the corner of the screen, and this is where we ended in part 2, thinking about the moment when God gives the sign of the covenant to Noah after prohibiting murder, the rainbow, the sign that there's a promise specifically not to send another flood. That's the extent of the covenant, really, that God establishes with Noah, that I'm not going to destroy you and your people. We're not going to start over again. We're not going to do a redo. We've done that, been there, not going to try again. But evidence that Noah has absorbed some of God's wisdom or some of God's ideas, or that Noah has begun to model himself with God, on God, or maybe a best way to put it, evidence that Noah has begun to walk with God, which is a phrase that we see early in Genesis. And so, there's a question throughout the text. What does it mean to walk with God? Well, Noah begins to show signs of that, first with the building of the altar. Well, I guess first with the following of the instructions to build the ark, and then with the building of the altar. But then with the cursing of Canaan, right? In a way, this is he's modeling himself on God. He's acting in the image of God. He's walking with God. You could argue when he learns how to curse. This is the origin of the curse, right? The first curse is Noah cursing Canaan, his grandson, the son of Ham. It's not exactly clear what leads up to this. Noah is drunk, right? He is the first cultivator of wine to soothe us after the labor of our hands working the fields. Noah drinks too much, gets drunk, passes out. Ham sees him naked. And that's a problem. It's not clear what kind of a problem that is. The other brothers, Shem and Japheth, enter Noah's sort of room or cave, wherever he is, and with their backs to him, and cover him. So they are not going to be cursed. It is Ham's children, right? It's interesting that Noah doesn't curse Ham directly. He curses Canaan. And of course, right at the time that this is being written down, we have the Israelites occupying the land that once belonged to the Canaanites. And so part of the goal of Genesis is to show why the Israelites belong in Canaan, right? And the beginning of that origin story, or the beginning of that, national myth, of the formation of the nation of Israel in the land that was previously the land of the Canaanites, right? Well, the Canaanites are a cursed people. Where did that curse begin? It began with Noah, right? So this is, again, part of the narrative, part of the thematic structure. It, in some sense, is serving a political purpose. Genesis is the beginning of the origin of the political right that the Israelites have to this land, right? Okay, now, notice that there's a kind of mythical status to every nation's attempt to claim legitimacy and to make a legitimate claim on a land, okay? Think about this country and our history. We continue to struggle with the sins of the past, of essentially acts of genocide against the native people in this land, but we continue to kind of lay claim to this land as Americans. And that's fraught. That is a politically fraught project. Okay, so something similar is going on here. But what we have at this moment is Noah cursing Canaan. And then the nations all branch out in all directions, okay, from Ham, from Shem, and from Japheth. Okay, the nations that branch out from Japheth go west into what is now Greece, right? This is at least the story. The origin of the Greek people comes from Japheth. Shem is the son of Noah, who gives rise to the nation of Israel ultimately. And Ham and his children give rise to the Canaanites and other nations. So these three children are thought to be the origin of many nations, okay? But specifically, we can focus on the Canaanites coming from Ham, the Israelites coming from Shem, and the Greeks coming from Japheth. At least that's right. That's the story, right? The story of national origins that's being told here. And then we have the Tower of Babel, right? This image of unity, but the unified people build this tower, and God descends, baffles their languages so they can't understand each other. They spread out, the people are scattered, right? So we end with this image of disunity. And the beginning of the patriarchal tales, that is to say, God speaking to Abraham in chapter 12, is, you could argue, the beginning of bringing the peoples back together, right? Under one God. But in any case, it becomes now a story of bringing people back together. It becomes the story of forming the nation of the Israelites. They are a scattered people. They are spread out, right? It becomes the story of unity. Okay, here are some images of. Let's see how much time we have. From Michelangelo, the Italian Renaissance painter, an image of the flood. This is how later Europeans pictured the flood story in Genesis. A later painting, I think 100 years later, again, European painting, another Italian painting. I forget the name of the painter here. I'm just showing you images, European images of the flood itself and sort of its impact on the human. Here's a sort of darker painting, again, I think coming from the 1700s. And every sort of century depicts the flood story to kind of represent its own cultural and political and religious ideas. Here's a very dark painting of Noah on the ark. I think after the ark has kind of settled on Mount Ararat, which is in sort of modern-day Armenia, to the north of Mesopotamia. The storm. Here are the people, Noah's animals, and it's unclear to me actually in this painting. Are these the people who are about to drown, or are these some of the survivors on Noah's ark? To me, this is an image of everybody drowning. So, right, I mean, right, Noah survives, and the animals he brings on the ark, everyone else drowns. And we have this kind of image in Gilgamesh, right, the destruction, everyone dies, and the gods kind of cowering. The gods manage to escape the floods, of course, but they cower like dogs. So here we see dogs and humans drowning in the flood. The day after, right, this is an American painting from the 19th century. This image of the dawn, right, a new day. And this is a 20th century painting by Turner, an English painter. I think this is an American painter named Cole, this one. 20th century painter named Turner. This is a painting of Noah, right? The day after the waters subside, he's sitting on his hill, his crop of land, right? And the dawning of a new day. Okay, this is an image of the Tower of Babel, painted by Bruegel, another German medieval painter. And so many people believe that the tower that is being built is like a ziggurat from ancient Mesopotamia. So I showed you photographs of the ruins of ziggurats, these giant sort of structures that were at the center of cities like Uruk in Babylon. But this is a later European representation of a round tower. Okay, but many people believe that the tower that is being referenced to is a more square ziggurat. But in any case, this is a European image of what the people were building, right up into the clouds. And this is the moment before they are scattered. Okay. Connections between the texts in the remaining minutes. We have the creation of Adam and the creation of Enkidu. Right? We've talked about those 2 moments. We have Adam and Eve gaining knowledge by eating the fruit of the tree. And we have Enkidu gaining knowledge from Shamhat. First, there is the sexual act, but then there is the sort of the socialization. She tells him stories. She teaches him how to speak. She teaches him how to dress. She teaches him how to eat and drink, right? So she teaches him many things. Is he learning something like what Adam and Eve learned from the eating of the tree, right? What kind of knowledge is Enkidu gaining? What does he know before he enters the city, before he meets Shamhat? What does he know after he meets Shamhat and enters the city? Same question can be asked of Adam and Eve. What is it that they know when they're living in the garden before they eat the tree? What do they now know after they eat the tree? And what impact does that have on sort of how they live? There's the serpent in chapter 3 and the tree of knowledge, right? Which we just mentioned. And in tablet 11, we have the serpent again and the herb of youth. Okay, interesting connection, right? The serpent is in many different cultures, but certainly in both Genesis and Gilgamesh, the serpent is there at the beginning and explains something about the origin of life as we know it. The word serpent and the word Eve in Hebrew are basically the same word, right? So the serpent and Eve are tied to the origin of life, right? They both have something to do with the word life in Hebrew. The tree of life in Genesis before they leave the garden, and the herb of youth in Gilgamesh. Okay, so there's these connections. Then there's a curse on Adam and Eve. There's the curse of mortality, the banishment of from the garden. Enkidu similarly is no longer at home in the forest. He's sort of banished from the forest, and he later curses Shamhat for this and the trapper. And his banishment from the forest leads to his death. Right? He returns to the forest and kills Humbaba, but this results in a curse of Enkidu, right? The curse of death. Right? So we can look at that connection. Okay, running out of time again. Cain and Abel, the first sons of Adam and Eve, living outside the garden, brotherhood, the eldest murderers, the youngest, the sibling rivalry, the curse on Cain. Cain founds the first city. Right? Do we see any analog for this in Gilgamesh? That's a question for you. Do we see an analog of the Cain and Abel story in Gilgamesh? And then we have Noah's birth, right? And the story of Noah, and you can compare that with Utnapishtim. Okay, I've got here some pictures. This is a map of the nations of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I talked about that earlier, so you can look at this on your own. And this is a picture of the journeys of the patriarchs, starting with Abraham, right, coming out of the city of Ur, which is very near Babylon, and Uruk. He heads north to Haran, and it's there that God speaks to him and sends him south, right, ultimately to Canaan. But he goes down into Egypt and back. There's many journeys of Abraham. And his son Isaac is in purple. Those are Isaac's journeys. Jacob will go back to Haran to find his wife, okay? And these are the brown represents roads, right, traveling through this region of the world. Okay, so that's it for now. Just showing you some maps. We're going to be looking at the journey of Odysseus. So we'll look at a map of Greece, but it's interesting to look at the journey of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, right? Okay, that's all for now. Hope this was helpful. Bye.